Welcome back, you pugnacious pummelers. I'm Lupinefiasco, this is Daily FaB Gameplay, and today we are playing Jarl Vetreidi. For anyone who's new to the channel, what we do here is review replays of games I played on the Talishar.net client days or weeks ago. After enough time has passed that I lose my bias and can more objectively judge the quality of my games. I will talk through turn cycles as if I were taking them now, explaining my thought processes for the lines I would take and comparing them to the lines I did take. We either learn from my mistakes or reinforce good play patterns with the overall goal of tightening and optimizing our gameplay in the future to take down paper events and walk away with that shiny cardboard. If you would like to check out the deck I'm playing here or try it for yourself on Talishar, there is a FaB deck link in the video description below. While you're down there, if you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. It's the best free way to support me and to make sure that you see daily FaB gameplay in your video feed 5 days a week. I have a Blue Sky, I have a Discord, and I have a Patreon where you can find the matchup guide for this deck list. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into the action. Back with a Jarl mirror for you. We lost the die roll, we are going second. I think that we do want to go first in this matchup. As an aggro deck, we want to go second against Guardian because we can use our opening hand to block, we get tempo on turn 2, and we're usually presenting enough damage that we put our opponent into a position where they either have to take that damage or use their hand to prevent it, and then their crackback is not that threatening, we sort of dodge disruption, etc. As Guardian, we instead run into situations where we can't convert a full hand on offense. So if our opponent just passes the turn, or in Jarl's case, plays something like Crumble to Eternity, or Imposing Visage, Crumble to Eternity, then we don't have a chance to cycle cards and we might end up with a hand that just doesn't really function. So looking at the hand we have here, we can kind of sort of do things, right? If our opponent just plays Imposing Visage, grabs Crumble, puts a -1 counter on either our gauntlets or our tunic, and then passes, our turn can be Channeling Frigid, pitch Frozen to Death, then pitch our other 2 reds to Coronet Peak, force our opponent to either pay or discard, and then pass the turn. We could also send Command and Conquer by pitching Frozen to Death, and then Arsenal Felling of the Crown, and hold on to Channeling Frigid. We have a few different options, depending on what our opponent does, but overall, going first is ideal in this matchup, if for no other reason than we get to put a counter on our tunic before our opponent does. Looking at loadouts here, I do generally prefer mine. The Sledge of Anvilmar is really good for keeping Channeling Frigid around for a second turn. If you can pitch 2 ice cards into it, you can tunic, pitch a blue for Sledge every 3 turns. Stalagmite is 3 more health in this matchup and is Frostbite against something like Pummel, but isn't always going to be super relevant, and Civic Steps does require quite a bit of mastery to use well against a class that could, in theory, send Sledge for 6, Command and Conquer off of 3 cards. I generally prefer our Earth Boots here, which just fill the graveyard with Earth cards for Decompose. So how are we going to block this Titan's Fist? Well, thinking about what we want to actually do with our next turn, the best thing we could do with these 4 cards is just play Channeling Frigid, Command and Conquer for 6, which means that I would want this Channeling Frigid, I want a blue, and I want Command and Conquer. We could block the Titan's Fist with Felling of the Crown, take 1 point of damage, fill our graveyard with Earth cards for Decompose, and that generally seems fine. We do have Remembrance in this deck in case the game goes really long. We do have more cards in our deck than our opponent does, so we are set to fatigue them. Blocking with Felling is not such a huge problem, or at least going down to 2 Fellings in our deck. So I like blocking with Felling. We could also block with Frozen to Death just to not take this 1 point of damage. but I think having the blue so that we are guaranteed to do something impactful on our turn is fine. And if we draw another blue, then we have the option to Channel Lake, pitch Frozen in Death, pitch Glacial Footsteps for Sledge, which is what I'm doing here. We get to Arsenal, Command, and Conquer, so that we're keeping it around in case we draw a Pummel or an Ice Quake, and can make it a lot more impactful than it would be right now. I'm also not super thrilled about putting blue Glacial Footsteps in Arsenal. I would much rather Arsenal, Command, and Conquer, so I really like this line. We're keeping the Channel Lake Frigid around for at least one turn. That is going to make it a little more difficult for our opposing Jarl to function. Unforgetting Unforgiving really punishing us for losing the die roll. The fact that Jarl could put down Crumble to Eternity on turn 0 and then grab Mangle with Unforgetting on turn 1. Really good for him. Now this Mangle does cost 5 and a Pummel would cost 3. So we are not guaranteed to get Mangle pummeled. We're never guaranteed to get Mangle pummeled, but our opposing Jarl would need a really, really good hand to pull this off, where otherwise he might not be able to, and the fact that Jarl can't play Icequake Mangle is very good for us. So the Mangle does have Dominate, but it only has 8 power. We can put a 3 block in front of it with probably Imposing Visage and Gauntlets of whatever their name is. You know, the Gauntlets. Put 5 in front of the Mangle, take 3. Our Crackback could be a few different things. We aren't going to have Tunic available. We could overpitch. Well, we'll block this with Imposing Visage in our Gauntlet. Our turn can then be Winter's Bite, CNC, Arsenal, Pummel. It could also be CNC, keep Winter's Bite and Pummel, take the IP penalty if Jarl blocks with Stalagmite, but if Jarl doesn't, then we could pitch the Winter's Bite to play Pummel. I think what I want to do with this after we block is actually play Winter's Bite and play the Command and Conquer and just Arsenal the Pummel. Our Tunic will be up on our next turn, and having the Pummel in Arsenal just means that we can pair it with whatever we want. We don't have to pair it with this Command and Conquer, and the problem with relying on the CNC connecting and us not getting Stalagmited is that Jarl can just block with Crown of Providence and save the Arsenal. He will still have to discard to the Pummel, but we are only getting 1 card from Jarl as opposed to 2. What this does do for us is it opens up our enemy Jarl to our Jarl triggers. When your opponent gives you their Blade Break armor, you are so far ahead of them compared to where you would be if you were relying on a Mangle or a Frozen to Death. Our Jarl is now going to take Frostbite for every turn of the game as long as we're playing a nice card. And while our equipment is not looking great, we are still in a position where we are not getting hit with Frostbites from our opposing Jarls. Here we've got a Command and Conquer. Tunic is up. Jarl has 2 cards in hand. We are also probably looking at getting CNC pummeled here, but just like our opposing Jarl, we don't have anything in Arsenal. So we're just thinking about how we would maybe want to block this or not. We would take 10 damage here and go to 26. We discard Frozen to Death. On our turn, we can play Channel Lake Frigid. By pitching Channel Mount Ison, we can then Tunic out of Frostfang. Our opposing Jarl gets a Frostbite from the CLF and then has to deal with CLF. So I think taking 10 here is fine. It isn't ideal, but we don't really do anything else. Choosing to take the hit here, or choosing to block and then getting pummeled, what I want to do with this hand now is discard Channel Mount Ison, and then we will use our Tunic and Channel Lake Frigid to attack the Sledge. Or not. We do give our opponent a Frostbite. We do make them have to respect this Frostfang. I think this is the worst of the three lines. We either don't block the CNC, take 10, discard a card, and then channeling Frostfang. The second line, I think that's the best line. The second best line we could have taken was just sledging for 6 and then arsenaling Frostfang, and I believe this is the worst line. Essentially, that CNC was just vanilla damage. It had no on-hit, and we were not going to commit our entire hand to blocking out the pummel. So we could have taken 3 more damage. I would have been very happy, in hindsight, at this time, to be at 27, but have a Channeling Frigid on the board after we have already started this Frostfang. So have Channeling, then we attack with Frostfang. The Frostfang is going to connect, which is pretty neat. Well, it won't, but we do get a card out of our opposing Jarl to play this Sink Below, so effectively, Frostfang did its job by getting a card, but imagine if we had Channeling Frigid on the board right now. I think we would be in a much better position, and we can wait and see what our opposing Jarl is going to do. He would not have an arsenal right now, and we're lucky. Say that this card in Jarl's hand was a Crumble to Eternity or a Pulse of Eisenloft, we would have to deal with 9 dominated Oaken-Old that makes us bottom 2 cards at random because we didn't play that Channeling Frigid. So I think this was a much worse line. We are fine. The Oaken-Old is not dominated. Our turn is going to be very easy. We pitch Imposing Visage, we play Oaken-Old, we reveal Crumble to Eternity for both fuses, and then we arsenal the Crumble. But imagine if Jarl didn't have an arsenal right now. I would feel much, much better about our position. Yes, we'd be at 23, but we would have tempo where we can't guarantee that we have tempo at this point, just based on not knowing what is in Jarl's arsenal, and with 2 cards, it being very likely that Jarl is going to be able to do something. We'll arsenal the Crumble. We aren't really excited about playing it. We can't break enemy gauntlets, tunic, civic steps. I really don't want to take an entire turn off for frozen to death. It's kind of just there as like the worst case scenario for if our entire hand gets taken, maybe by an Oaken-Old, or we end up really full blocking. We could just play Crumble as a 1-card thing. It gives a Frostbite, it takes away 2 points of block from Civic Steps, it'd be fine, but I'm not excited about playing it, and it's sort of obnoxious that it is now in my arsenal. So what we're going to do with this hand is take advantage of our Spring Tunic. We can use the Tunic to play So Tomorrow, put Oaken-Old back in our deck, and that isn't really the exciting part about So Tomorrow. What is exciting about So is that we can either block in such a way that we get more Earth cards into our graveyard or just play Earth cards. But once we get 3 into our graveyard, because So Tomorrow banishes itself, our first Felling of the Crown can just choose 3 Earth cards instead of 2 Earth cards and a non-Earth action to turn itself on. So while So Tomorrow is much better out of Arsenal, our Arsenal is currently occupied by something that doesn't have Go again. So what we will do instead is use our Tunic to play So Tomorrow, just get it into Banish to support our Fellings. And then we can play Icequake Frostfang. Give Jarl a Frostbite, attack for 8, force him to deal with maybe an additional Frostbite, maybe having to pay from hand, and hopefully put him into a spot where this Crumble to Eternity, giving Dominate, is not a huge deal. At this point, I'm just reading my cards. I'm under the impression that So Tomorrow lets you pick 2 attack action cards, not an attack action card that costs 2 or more. But we are looking at our graveyard here. We don't have another Earth card in our graveyard, and we even need 2. So what we could potentially think about doing is blocking with our gauntlets and our boots, and that isn't great. If we're giving up 2 pieces of equipment to Jarl, hopefully we'll draw something like an Autumn's Touch that we can use to play around whatever Jarl attacks with. We can block with that and maybe gauntlets. Jarl still has 2 Mangles left in his deck, so that might be something we're going to get hit with. We can definitely put more Earth cards into our graveyard for Decompose. That's really what I'm thinking about right now. Jarl giving us 2 pieces of equipment, another Unforgiving Unforgetting, which is too bad. Jarl is going to be able to tutor out another Mangle. I don't like Mangle. I think it is a trap. I think that Crush as a mechanic is just, at this point in Flesh and Blood, it isn't good enough. It's been left behind. The fact that it can actually just be blocked is way too good. But the fact that it can be tutored out by Unforgiving Unforgetting is very good. So here, our opposing Jarl is really showing the power of the card. I still don't think it is good, which is why it isn't in my list. But I'm not going to deny that it definitely has its uses. So we've got a Mangle coming in for 8 with Dominate. We can pretty much assume that this is getting pummeled. So we are not going to be able to block this out. The Crush effect. We wouldn't be able to do so without giving up armor anyway, which accomplishes Jarl's quest of freeing up one of our armor slots. So the best thing that we can do is just put ourselves into a position where we are setting up. We can block with Glacial Footsteps. Actually, we can block with Rootbound Carapace, not Decompose, but just get Earth cards into our graveyard. Or we should be able to Decompose and then discard the other Rootbound Carapace to our Felling of to the Pummel. We'll play our Crumble to Eternity to free up the Arsenal slot, Arsenal Felling, and they can hold on to Glacial Footsteps. We do want to block for 3 here. I believe we don't want to Decompose or Rootbound because we should only have 1 or 2 Earth cards in graveyard, and the enemy Jarl is going to destroy our Tunic most likely rather than our Gauntlet. And we don't want to block with the Gauntlet. We don't want to do Jarl's job for him by destroying our equipment. Yeah, so we're looking, we only have 1 Earth card in graveyard. So the Crumble. Sorry, the Crumble will be our 3rd Earth card. So what we can do is block with Rootbound, not Decompose, discard probably Footsteps to the Pummel effect, then play Unforgiving Unforgetting, Arsenal Felling, play Crumble, Arsenal Felling. On our next turn, Crumble will destroy itself, giving our Felling Dominate, and then we can banish it, Felling, and Rootbound to the Decompose. It doesn't particularly matter what we discard here. Maybe the Rootbound would have been better, but in either case, because we aren't going to Decompose the second Rootbound, it is just a 3-block, and we aren't going to play Glacial Footsteps, so it is also just a 3-block. Jarl destroying our Gauntlets rather than our Tunic, I think, is an incredible misplay, not only because Tunic is going to be more impactful over the course of the game, but because our Gauntlets are an Earth card, which helps fuel our Decompose. What I suspect happened is that our enemy Jarl thinks that we are on Mangle because we have the Gauntlets, and that by destroying the Gauntlets, Jarl is preventing our Mangle from getting Dominate or +2. This is an interesting decision to Arsenal the Rootbound, looking at our opposing Jarl's graveyard and seeing that he has not played Command and Conquer yet. Here it is. So what's interesting is we would not have been able to protect this Felling of the Crown if it was in our arsenal, because we would have 2 defense reactions and an instant. But because we arsenaled the Rootbound instead, we can let that get destroyed by the CNC. We don't need to block the CNC, and then we get to play our Felling. So a pretty heads-up play by me in the past, and I'm glad I thought of it, because I might have made a different decision now and then have been punished for it. If this Felling of the Crown is Rootbound Carapace, our turn is not very good. is in fact pretty abysmal. So what we get to do instead, knowing that we are not getting pummeled here, we can just take the damage, take 9, go to 8, lose our arsenal. We can play Winter's Bite, which will eat up this Frostbite, and then we can play Felling of the Crown, pitching Exposed to Elements. This Staunch Response is going to pay for the Frostbite. So we do get to play out our entire hand. It just means taking 9 damage to do it. We don't get to use our Quicken token, but we are playing around the Frostbite, and then we're playing around Felling of the Crown. So I think that's what I'm supposed to do, is just take 9 here. It kind of sucks. I would prefer if this was not a CNC, but it's still fine. We did get a second Frostbite from the Icequake. I didn't think about that. So the first thing that we do this turn actually costs 2. And really all that means for us is that we were correct to keep our entire hand. We just won't get to use any of it besides Felling of the Crown. We're going to have to pitch these 2 blues to pay for Felling and then bottom our Staunch Response. And it is good that we didn't block with Winter's Bite, because we would not have been able to really take action this turn. We would have played used Coronet Peak and paid 5 to do it. Instead, we get to Felling for 8. Our opposing Jarl is going to have to bottom a card, and we are hoping that he just can't really do anything with 4 cards. We are very far behind at this point in the game. But at the very least, our Tunic is going to be up on our next turn, and we are swinging for 8. So if Jarl decides to just tank the damage, maybe he can't convert, or maybe he is only converting enough that we can still block with armor and then hope to get in with a lucky Oaken Old or another Felling of the Crown. We're in a tight spot for sure. This is not where I want to be in this game. And those 2 Unforgetting Unforgivings tutoring out Mangles, as much as I think the card is a trap, I cannot deny the value of 4 block plus a tutor. If Zen has taught us anything, it is that turning your cards into more cards is very good. This hand is fine. We can play Sink Below, we can play Winter's Bite, which will give Jarl a Frostbite and force him to discard or pay. We could think about arsenaling Oaken Old. Our Spring Tunic is going to be up, so we could think about blocking with Oaken Old, playing Winter's Bite, using Spring Tunic and Channel Mount Ison to pay for Sledge, and then arsenal a Sink Below. Instead, we have Imposing Visage coming down, grabbing Crumble to Eternity. Really bad turn for Jarl. It is nice that his hand was apparently terrible, because this is exactly the sort of thing we need to be happening. So we play our Winter's Bite no matter what. That's just a very solid play. And then I don't think this game is going to go to fatigue. We're already on such low life totals. Let's just play Oaken Old rather than pitch it to Sledge. We're getting 1 more damage in by playing the Oaken Old. We still have Remembrance in our deck. If worst comes to worst, we don't have to worry about anti-fatigue and, oh, we only give up 1 point of damage, it keeps cards in our deck. Like, let's just send 7 instead of 6. 7 is a bigger number than 6 is. We get a pummel out of our Jarl. That's pretty cool. Presumably Jarl either doesn't have an attack, or maybe has more reds than he's able to use to pay for attack pummel. I hate this line. Everything that I just said about 7 being a bigger number than 6 still holds true. This doesn't make sense. This is just losing value. This game is not going to fatigue. I would rather just have Jarl be at 10. The hand that we draw into, solid. We have a blue, a CNC, a pummel, and our Tunic is up. So this is all great to me. What we do need to be concerned about when we're going for this Tunic pummel play is Jarl still has Stalagmite. And while we can pay for CNC pummel, with 4 resources. We can't pay for CNC Pummel with 4 resources through a Frostbite. So if we don't have to block, if Jarl just does another Imposing Visage or maybe Frozen to Death, then we're set up. We can just play CNC and pummel it. If Jarl does attack with something, what I want to do is play my Sink Below from Arsenal and bottom Oakenold and try to turn it into a blue. It's a very interesting line just based on what Jarl does and how much we need to block. We're going to see if he can present, let's say, more than 6 damage, or if he can present, let's say 7 damage, because we have a Sink Below in Arsenal and our Oakenold blocks for 3. There's a very strong defense for just saying we're going to use Sink Below, we're going to block with Oakenold, that covers up 7. We're going to play Command and Conquer, pitch a blue. Let's think about this play. Jarl is giving us a Frostbite. We have a Sink Below in Arsenal. We want to play the Sink Below. Using our Tunic first just gives us that option. Jarl has already played the Icequake, so we know something is coming, or maybe it was a bait, but okay. At that point, who cares? Yeah, we got, but we're fine. So we've got a Titan's Fist coming in for 7. And here's where the line I was describing, because I already knew what was going to happen, comes into play. We can play our Sink Below. We have a floating resource to pay for it. We would get a Frostbite from this Titan's Fist. So we can block with our Oakenold and Sink, cover the 7. We don't have our Tunic up anymore, so our turn is just play CNC, pitch a blue, Arsenal, pummel. Or we can take 3 damage, block with the Sink Below, take 3 damage, go to 5, get another Frostbite, and bottom Oakenold. And if we turn Oakenold into a blue, now we have 6 resources to pay for what is 6 resources worth of cost. CNC will cost 3 to pay through the Frostbite. Pummel will cost 3 to pay through the Stalagmite Frostbite. To me, that is playing to win. We take damage, we try to turn this Oakenold into a blue. If we get the blue, then we're so far ahead because we get to CNC pummel through our opponent's armor. We get his arsenal, we get a card from hand, and we are rewarded. Now, if we miss, we just took a bunch of damage and we IP ourselves. But to me, this is the winning line. This is playing to win, not playing to not lose. And playing to not lose says, let's just keep on going, hope our Jarl bricks. Playing to win says, we have the opportunity to really pull ahead right now, let's use it. So we get the blue because we're the greatest Flesh and Blood players in the world. We get to play the Command and Conquer. Our Jarl presumably doing value math to decide if he wants to block with the Stalagmite, because if we have a pummel, then we need a blue. If we have the pummel and the blue, how much does Jarl want to commit? Are we bluffing? Did we take a bunch of damage to try and trick Jarl into overcommitting? I don't know how I would answer this question. I don't know what is in our opposing Jarl's hand, but on my side of the board, I feel great about my position. This is fantastic. Our Jarl is flirting with the idea of blocking the Stalagmite. If he does, then he just gets punished for it, loses his shield, loses the ability to interfere with the next pummel play we make. And Jarl brought Titan's Fist, not Summit. So losing the Stalagmite doesn't even benefit him. All it does is take away resources in the future. So he does go for it. We get to pummel here. We deal 6 points of damage, tie up life totals, get Jarl's arsenal, get a card from his hand. Yes, he still does have Tunic. Giving us a Frostfang from hand and a yellow pummel from arsenal is like incredibly good for us. The hand we draw into is kind of not very good. Here we've got Jarl playing Icy Encounter, which is a card I did not remember until this game. But it is a 2-for-6 ice card. On hit, it gives a Frostbite. So we cannot block it and still have a real turn. I mean, I guess we could, right? We block with Autumn's Touch and Felling of the Crown, take no damage, get to Sledge for 6 by paying 5. Jarl has to give us at least 1 card, maybe just give us Tunic and Civic Steps, and then keep 4 cards. Could be fine. Or we could play to win instead of playing to not lose, which says we block with Autumn's Touch, go to 2, pick up a second Frostbite, then pay 5 to Felling of the Crown, which we can decompose. Jarl has to bottom a card and then has to give us more cards. So I think this is the correct play. I like throwing 8 with Disruption instead of 6 without it. Now it's possible that this was wrong and we should just be at 5, but I like this play. I like being aggressive with my Fellings and forcing Jarl to respect my attack. Jarl has to give us a card. He has to bottom a card to Felling and then has to give us at least 1 card to not die to 8. He cannot cover this with armor, which he would have been able to cover Sledge with armor. So we'll see what he does with it. He's played 2 Unforgetting Unforgivings, presumably has Sink Belows left in the deck. 2 Unforgettings, 2 Sinks so far. The yellow pummels make me think this might be the Battle-Hardened Geneva top 8 list, which was only running 2 Unforgetting Unforgivings. So Jarl could still have a 4 block left in the deck in the form of Sink Below, but probably doesn't have any 4 block cards left and is not going to be tutoring out a Mangle here, which would be very bad. Jarl does have the Tunic up, but gives us to it on blocks, which is interesting. I don't know that there is a difference between being at 2 and being at 1, especially when the Tunic was full. We draw into a Channel Mount Ison, which is very interesting, because what we get to do with this is really decide how we want to attempt to kill Jarl. So we have a few different plays, and they all involve playing Channel Mount Ison. We give Jarl a Frostbite, and then we need to pitch an ice card to keep Channel Mount on the board. So what we can do, because we have our boots that give us an embodiment of Earth when we block with a non-attack action, is block with Boots and Crumble, which covers 5 points of damage. Then we could block with our Coronet Peak, which covers the 6th point of damage, and we go down to 1. We keep 3 cards in our hand. Our turn is then play Channel Mount Ison, play Winter's Bite, use Tunic and Polar Blast to attack with Sledge. We are attacking for 6. Our opponent has pitched or discarded to Winter's Bite and has 2 Frostbites. So assuming he doesn't heal or kill us on our turn somehow, he just dies to the Frostbite effect from Channel Mount Ison. What we could also do is block with Crumble to Eternity and Winter's Bite and our Boots. We cover 7 points of damage. We can then play Channel Mount Ison and pitch our Polar Blast to Coronet Peak. So we are only dealing 1 point of damage to Jarl, but we're staying at 2. We are forcing him to pay or discard, and then he only has 3 cards. Again, we're going for the winning play. Life is a resource. So we are not going to block like this, because this does not kill Jarl. What we want to do is block with our Boots, Crumble to Eternity, and Polar Blast. This Crumble to Eternity, Boots, Crumble, Coronet Peak, go to 1, then play Winter's Bite, play Channel Mount, Tunic, pitch Polar Blast for Sledge, which is going to be enough to put the game away. Jarl needs to respect our 6, and then somehow would need to clear Frostbites before he dies, so it is possible to do that. If Jarl was able to, let's say, pitch a blue to the Winter's Bite, float 2 resources. We play our Channel Mount Ison, Jarl has 2 Frostbites, we attack for 6. Jarl could play Sink Below from hand using the 2 floating resources and eating the 2 Frostbites, block with another block card from hand. That covers up the damage. Jarl keeps 1 card, probably sends Titan's Fist for 4, and we have to respect it. We can't kill him with the frostbites, and then we're probably in a position where we're scrambling to sledge and can't keep Channel Mount icing around. But assuming that Jarl did not draw the blue or did not draw the sink below, this play does just win the game. So at this point, we're just waiting to see what Jarl's got available. Pitches the blue, and we will see how he deals with the sledge. Sink below, another blocking card, and then a second blue to pay for Titan's Fist puts him in a winning position. But if he can't put basically exactly sink below together, then he just loses the game. Pulse of Ice and Loft could actually do it here. Pulse and just another card to pitch clears the frostbites. But if Jarl doesn't have a way to clear these frostbites on our turn, then he does just die. And it would appear that that is going to be the case. Jarl takes 1, goes to 1, and that's the game. So really, really tight game. I don't know that we even won that game so much as our opponent lost it based on having one really bad draw after we were so far behind on tempo, Jarl having to Imposing Visage out to crumble to eternity and do absolutely no damage. Just horrendously bad for him and really good for us. Before that, I do think that Mangle is a trap, but each Unforgetting Unforgiving being worth 4 block and a tutor for Mangle was very strong. So I get why someone would want to play that. I just don't agree with it. I think Jarl has plenty of other very strong ways to win, and hopefully I showed some of those off. So if you enjoyed this game, if you learned something from it, be sure to pummel that like button. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. If you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. It's free, it helps me out. I have a Patreon, a Blue Sky, and a Discord, which can all be found in the video description below. Until the next time I see you on Daily FaB Gameplay, stay frosty.